Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for welcoming us in this space. I really felt it as you were, welcoming people and inviting us to land and to check in and to share what we are wishing for ourselves. It just felt really, really grounding for me. So I thank you for holding space. It's really what it's about, really. When we're here, what we're doing here for each other's practice, because it's very personal in a way. Each of us today is coming from a different place in their day, from a different place in their lives. But something brought us together, and there is something about holding space together, actually. So I want to invite you to welcome yourself and to welcome each other and to really see this group as holding space collectively for each other. Let's take a deep breath, friends. A couple of deep cleansing breaths. Just bringing the mind home to the body. Feeling that kind of coming together. You may want to close your eyes or gaze softly down just to kind of signal your system that you're switching modes of being right now. You're not outwardly projected right now. You're turning inwards, very gently, very softly, turning inwards to meet yourselves. And so can we say, each of us, to ourselves right now, Baruch haba, Brucha haba, welcome. Welcome, my soul, my being, my body, in this moment of life. This unique moment of this precious life. Not only hiding under its utter simplicity. Just sitting home. Making space, making space for ourselves, our emotions, our state of being. We're not in this moment trying to solve anything or change anything. We're just making space. We're just welcoming. And if we're in a place which is very, very, very common, where there is anxiety, tension, anything, it may feel a little bit more challenging to make space. But again, we're not trying to solve anything. We're just making space. It's physical. It's a physical thing, just like Abraham opens his tent. We're opening our bodies and our hearts. We're making space. We're softening to welcome what is. we're attuning to this feminine quality, which all of us have, whether we are men or women or any other gender. The feminine quality of making space, holding space. In a way that is nurturing and loving. Let's just be with this intention for one more minute. And then we'll go into some learning on that theme. And if you'd like to connect to the physicality of making space, really, of holding space for yourself, you may want to literally hug yourself or place a hand on the heart, a hand on the belly. We may want to stay like this today during our sit. Let's take a deep breath, friends. Beautiful breath out. Coming back very gently, not 100%. Listening to the learning we're going to be doing from this deeper place that is already more contemplative, receiving from within as something we already know. As we talk about text, as we talk about the Bahasha for a minute or two, meeting this from a place that is not intellectual. And so I invite Adi to share the screen, please. Thank you. Bahashat Vayera starts with this narrative, very, very famous narrative of Abraham seeing men, strangers, anashim, men, and really running towards them and inviting them. And I just want to read quickly in English the narrative, because I just find it so poetic. And he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, 3 men were standing beside him. And again, I invite you, if you'd like to listen to this with your eyes closed, and to meet the text from within, to feel the energies, to visualize the scene. The 3 men were standing beside him, and he saw, and he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground, which is an attitude of kavod, welcoming and honoring our guests, which, as Mark very on point alluded to, is really what we do when we meditate. We welcome our guests. We don't know who's going to come. Is it going to be a memory? Is it going to be anger? Is it going to be joy? We don't know, but we welcome with kavod, with honor. And he said, "My lords, if only I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant. Please let a little water be taken and bathe your feet and recline under the tree. And I will take a morsel of bread and sustain your hearts. Afterwards, you shall pass on, because you've passed by your servant." And they said, "So shall you do, as you have spoken." So as we know, this is really one of the scenes that kind of grounds this image that we have of Abraham as embodying hospitality, the value of achnasat orchim, hospitality, welcoming, inviting guests, which is so central in Jewish culture. And so I was thinking about it, which deeper midah, which deeper kind of mind state, a state of consciousness does it take to be hospitable? And what came to mind was something that is even maybe a declination of chesed, of loving kindness, maybe a deeper level or another level. And that's empathy. Empathy. You need empathy in order to show kindness and hospitality. And this is what we see here. Why is Abraham inviting them to, drink and bathe their feet and sit under the shade and eat? Is because he knows that if he was on the road, this is exactly what he would need. And what I find beautiful when I think about it is that we know from the rest of the story that the angels, well, the men really are, right? Angels, malachim, emissaries, shlichim, of the divine. So I think they don't need all that. They don't need all these physical things, but maybe they too are responding with empathy or with kindness, actually, when they're saying yes and they're taking human shape, so they can mirror each other with Abraham and really feel connected. And so if we can just go a little down on the source sheet, please, but in the next page. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so I was reflecting on, what would be a term that we have for empathy? In kind of like classical Hebrew language or in terms of concept. And there is this concept of yetziat nefesh, that when the soul, the being, really goes out towards someone. So we have this beautiful pasuk in Yeshayahu, talks about being, drawing out towards the soul, towards the hungry, and then the soul that is hurt, that is poor, will be satiated, will receive everything it needs. And then there's a commentary, Vayikra Rabbah, a midrash, that comments on this pasuk, v'tafek lera'ev nafshecha, and you draw out your soul towards the hungry. And Rabbi Levi says something interesting, maybe we're not all like Abraham. Maybe we can't afford, because Abraham was rich. Maybe we can't all afford to give and be very, 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 very generous, concretely, but we can still give. And he says, if you don't have to give him, then you can give him in words, and you can say to him, my soul goes, my being goes towards you. That I don't have what to give you. And then the Midrash says, and then his soul will be satiated. And I think it's a bit like what Mark was alluding to earlier about the trumot, about your contributions, your offerings, that, even ever so little, everything, it's more about what the being wants to give. Does the being come out of himself to meet the other? And in order to have empathy for someone, and that's the last source, and if we can go down on the sheet, please. In order to have empathy for someone else, we actually need self-empathy. That's the first step. And I wrote here, I included here an excerpt from an article, which you can read because you have the document in the Dropbox, about mindfulness as actually a practice of self-empathy. And so that's the meditation I will invite us to do now. Right? The kind of like self-empathy really is self-awareness. So going back to this idea of welcoming ourselves as we are in the moment. So let's just practice this, friends, today. Thank you so much, Adi, for this sheet. I want to invite you, if you need to adjust your posture so that you can sit in a way that is very comfortable. And to start by taking a couple of very, very deep breaths again. And turning inwards very, very softly, because sometimes it's a bit scary, sometimes it's difficult to come to meet ourselves with a lot of kindness, with a lot of empathy, self-empathy. Just being there, just opening our tent, opening our heart to what is today. We may choose our breath as an anchor, just so that we can stay grounded and not go left and right with every thought that comes up. Or we may choose a point of anchor in our body, a physical sensation, the feel of the floor or the chair. Just choosing an anchor. Keeping connected, following that breath or that anchor. And as we do this, thoughts will come up. And all we do is welcome them, and then come back to sit at the entrance of the tent. A thought comes up, and I lift my eyes, the eyes of my awareness, so I can see it and meet the thought, meet the guest. With kindness, no discrimination, no favorite guest, no, oh, I don't want this one. But all guests, all they need is our hospitality, the hospitality of our heart. All that bad thoughts and feelings need is the hospitality of our hearts. And then it can relax and dissolve if they're welcome enough times. And in between these visitors, be welcoming the next breath. And the next breath. Can we be fully present for our guests for the next 2 minutes, last minutes of the seat? What does it feel like when, instead of contracting, when we see that very old familiar anxiety come again? Instead of contracting, we softened and welcomed it and gave it all the attention and care and love it really deserves. What if we were nurturing, like Avraham, with our visitors? Giving ourselves all the empathy that we often do have for other people, starting with ourselves. It's a moment of gratitude for ourselves for coming today, which is in itself an act of empathy, of self-empathy. And gratitude for each other. So we get ready to say Kaddish with our Mark.
Thank you so much, as always, for guiding us so beautifully, Mira. And friends, we seal our practice, as we always do, by offering an opportunity for those in mourning or observing art sites, or if it's your custom to participate in Kaddish, to do so, and for the rest of us to practice empathy by being present and compassionate witnesses to the grief of others. We invite those of you who are reciting Kaddish, if you'd like to put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box, either now or after we recite Kaddish. Thanks, Sadi, for sharing the words on the screen. And I invite those of you who are participating to join me in rising in body or in spirit. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Yemei Rabbah. Ba'alma Dibra Kirete Me'amlich Malchute B'chayechon Yemechon B'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala B'zman Karib Mimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorav Olam Olamei Amayeh Barach V'Yishtabach V'Yipachar V'Yitmamam V'Yitnaseh Hada, Yisalev, Yisalam, Yisha, Brishata, Ela, Mikol, Birkata, Yeshbekata, Yeshbekata, Venechema, Ta'amiran Ba'alma, Ru, Amen. Ein Klavara Min Shamaya, Chaim Aleinu Bial Kol Yisrael, Bimir Amen. Aseh Shalom Bimromeinu, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, B'Eretz Yisrael, Bial Kol Yoshvei Tevel.
Amen.
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 Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. We want to thank Tish Levy. Thank you so much, Tish, for sponsoring our practice, honoring your quite amazing Beit Din, who escorted you into the Jewish people 21 years ago. We were also blessed to have you and to share the journey with you collectively. And lovely to see Rabbi Jonathan Slater here, one of the honorees for today, to be present for that and to celebrate this wonderful anniversary. Thanks as always to Adi Stein for holding our tech space with so much skill and with grace, and to our teacher for today, Mira Neshama Niculescu. And looking forward to some conversation with Mira. If you have a question and if you're able, would like to stay on for a conversation with Mira, please put your questions in the chat box and preface it by writing question in advance, and we'll try to keep an eye on that. For those of you who are leaving us for now, I hope to see you tomorrow or another day this week for practice at the usual time, and hope you have a safe day and many blessings to you. So again, reminder just to put your questions in the chat box, and here we go. Okay. Wow, Mira, there's so many beautiful things to explore in that. First, I wanted to invite you to say a little bit about that. That was really taken by your invitation for people to close their eyes and listen to the words of Torah that you were sharing. And I can't remember the expression you used. But I took it to the effect of, see if you can experience the Torah experience these words from inside. I don't know if I don't think those were your exact words. Maybe you remember, maybe you don't. I don't know, but maybe you know what were you going for there? What were you inviting us to do? I think that's really a powerful way for us to think about how to bring our practice and connect it with Torah.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I think I said something along the lines of meeting the words from within or something. Because it's true, we have this kind of idea that, there is spirituality and then there's learning, Torah learning as like an intellectual activity. Whereas to me, it's a deeply spiritual practice. And sometimes it's good, especially if you have someone reading the text for you, to listen from within and to let your own wisdom kind of find its own echo. We know, that I can't remember where it is, but kind of midrash of, the fact that the baby knows everything in the mother's womb, right? And then when he's born, there's an angel.
And I know. Yes, you did say. You said. You also said something to that effect of something we already know.
Yeah. And
I thought that's a beautiful way of also understanding practice as a way of remembering or calling up from the vault, right? Something we already know. Oh, that's exactly. Where the resonant comes from. I already knew this, right?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to point to. Yeah, exactly. This wisdom that's already there, and to connect to that and to trust that, and to not think that the wisdom is going to come from the outside, from the text, from the teacher, but that everything that speaks to us, it's because it resonates. And it resonates with something that's already inside. So.
Right. Yeah. So it's not really acquiring Torah in that way. It's remembering Torah through the process, through the practice. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. I'm keeping an eye out for questions from folks, but I got plenty of my own. So
I'm seeing one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Go ahead. What do you see? Oh, there you
it's
go.
about the expression I said in Hebrew. That is one soul reaching out to another soul. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like in the text, it's literally written Tetse nafshi, my soul will go out. So I called it Yitziat Nefesh, the going out of the soul, which is this kind of movement, right? And I think it's amazing because it's a very visual metaphor for empathy. The soul is like flying towards, and the soul, the being, really, it's the whole being, right? Because nefesh, it's that level of soul that comprises the body. It's a body level of embodied level of soul. It's like our whole being goes towards someone.
Do you see Lori's question here? Lori wrote, I love the idea of opening our own tent to ourselves. It felt like opening the ark to my Torah within. So beautiful image. My heart. When we have deep, difficult questions, who is it within that we ask for answers? I don't know if that's a rhetorical question or a question you want to respond to.
I love it. I love it. I think in a way, Lori, you just answered your own question, by saying opening our tents to ourselves and opening the ark to your Torah within, to your heart, right? That's the beauty of it, right? Just,
So here's my other question, my other main question, Mira, is that, of course, we know that people who engage in contemplative practice, meditation, sometimes meet the question or accusation or the danger of navel gazing. And I think what you offered today was you offered a kind of a prescription or an invitation to understand the process of connecting to others, that empathy that you were describing, as in this practice beginning with yourself, right? Self-empathy. Go back to that quote from the mindful schools teacher, that mindfulness is a practice of becoming familiar, of going into ourselves in order to connect with others. So I wonder if you might talk about that. If people, if you hear people where you hear that inner voice of, oh, this is just navel gazing, this is just, self-absorption, etc. How do you respond to that?
Oh, to me, it's just so easy to respond to that. It's just very simple. We can't take care of ourselves if we can't. We can't take care of people if we don't take care of ourselves. And that's what we're being said in planes, right? That we have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first before we can take care of someone else. This is like the klal gadol, the biggest principle of Torah, right? You shall love your fellow as yourself, meaning to the extent that we love ourselves, we are able to love others. And so to me, it's actually almost like a duty, like a responsibility, self-care and self-empathy, because if I can't give that to myself, I literally cannot give it to others. And I was just speaking earlier with someone from my family who is in deep pain, and they don't have a meditation practice. And so you could say I spend many hours, every day and all the time gazing at my navel, right? Like turning within. And what it does is that actually, because I'm grounded, because I'm centered within, then my gaze goes outward to people because I'm centered, I'm, grounded, anchored in myself. And that dear family member, I can see they're like not grounded within themselves, right? They're beside themselves. And so they keep looking towards themselves because they're like, right? And they're self-centered as a result. So I really feel that this turning within is kind of the condition to be able to turn outwards, really just like a flower, right? So it's essential.
Of course, we've got Hillel, of course, in Pirkei Avot too, right? Right? So, also a prescription of practice through concentric circles, beginning with ourselves and then extending outward, and then also, Hillel, great mindfulness teacher, if not now, when, right? So this is the moment where we can both experience deep empathy for ourselves, and through our capacity to do that and compassion for ourselves, we can have, we often, I think, I'll speak from the I here. I often think I have to begin with the other. I have to begin with the compassion for the other. And there's a voice inside me, I think, at least, that accuses me of selfishness if I start with myself. And so I think this is, at least for me, and maybe for others here, it can feel a little counterintuitive in that sense.
Mm. Yeah, you know, I really think it really is the kind of influence of Christianity on the Western culture we grew up in. Because Christianity, one of the basis of it is the notion of sacrifice, that God sacrificed itself for us. And so Christian culture is very much about, you know, who am I to take care of myself first? Like, oh my God, that's so selfish. And we grew up with that and we were influenced by that. But it's actually taking deep responsibility to say, okay, I'm going to take care of this being, because if this being is not fine, it's not going to have anything to give. I just see someone sharing something beautiful,
Right.
quote, that we can't give from an empty well. And that's
Mm-hmm.
true. And I think anyone who is a parent or a social worker or a psychologist here knows that, like, you need to take care of yourself if you want to be able to take care in a way that's healthy of other people.
Right. And I see Julie Cole put in also chat, a number of people here, probably Sheila Peltz-Weinberg and John McCransky led a retreat, an all-day retreat recently for us on compassion for self and others, that I think this is fitting very neatly into that as well.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a question that I think is important from Beverly. She's asking, what happens when the pain has been buried for years and it's very intense? You know it's there, but you don't want to touch it. Are you self-centered or just afraid? Thank you for asking this question. I think it's very, very, very important to emphasize that we need to respect the pace of the system. And when I say the system, I mean the emotional system, including the unconscious. If you go too strong, too hard, too direct in something, it can actually be damaging. So we have to go slowly. And if you feel it, you can just stay outside, for instance, just stay around. You don't have to like open the door, you know, brutally. Many meditation teachers talk about it. You know, Jack Kornfield, who became a psychologist, that, you know, there are people who can't even sit because there is so much trauma. So then they have to do walking meditation, for instance. So to stay around, you know, to not force and go, we have to respect like what's happening inside. And when that pain is ready to be open, you know, and we can take care of it, or you need a friend, you need a teacher, you need a psychologist, like you need to do it when there's a container. And if the container is just you alone and you feel a bit fragile, I would not open the container. I would just say like, oh, okay, it's there. You know, that's very important to respect that pace.
And last question, if I see another one here, I'll interrupt myself. But I think of this parsha, especially that beginning, as such a, you know, as a paradigmatic Torah text for Jewish mindfulness practice. Right? Lift, you know, of Abraham, first of all, positioning himself at the entrance of the tent, lifting his eyes, seeing, beholding, and then responding. It's just like, wow, it's all right there. So I was wondering, if you choose one text, someone says, oh, where do you see this in the Torah, this Jewish mindfulness practice? Where do you go? I mean, it was, you know, there are a number. Of course, you know, there's Yaakov waking up from his dream, right? There's Moshe at the bush. I don't know. What do you like?
I think this is one of them, but when you were saying this, if I had to think of another one, obviously the one that came to mind is the Sulam Yaakov. And then there's another one that I absolutely adore, which is in Dvarim, towards the end, when Moshe says, you know, the thing, the davar, is not far away from you, right? That you need someone else. It's bepicha belevavecha. It's very close to you, like in your heart, and it's in your mouth and in your heart. So like the fact that knowledge, awareness, insight is within, you know, and this invitation to turn within.
Beautiful. All right, we are at time. As always, Mira, lots of appreciation, a lot of gratitude to you for leading us so beautifully and for the teaching. And just a reminder for folks who are interested to go to Mira's website and also to check out her teaching that she's doing right now for ritualwell.org. I don't know if Adi, you got that handy to plug back in there. Want to thank you, Tish, as not only for your sponsorship today, but being for such a dedicated practitioner, devoted part of this practice community that we've created. And thanks to Adi and Mira, of course, as always. And we hope to see everyone back tomorrow at the usual time.
And thanks to Mark.
Okay. I'll take it. Thank you.